What is the media landscape there?
In Hungary, we have, as an output, as a situation, a relatively balanced and very diverse media landscape. But this media landscape results from a range of healthy and unhealthy financing practices and media practices. It is thanks to God's grace that even despite insufficient regulation and some intransparency in financing in terms of the media landscape in Hungary is still very balanced. I would say it's very politically parallel. It is obvious to each and every reader in the country whether they're reading an opposition or a pro-government newspaper. This is a fact of life that Hungarian readers have accepted. They do not really believe in the concept of objective media anymore. They understand that in order to get as close to reality as possible, they need to read multiple media sources. They need to see multiple sides of the media coin. And the reason I say this results from a range of healthy and unhealthy financing practices is that being a small language market, even within the European framework, in the European comparison, you cannot
blame for a government, journalists, or media itself for having that attitude that no one believes in objective journalism.
So do I finish or do I answer your next question?
Okay.
I would just say, like, being a small language market, it is almost impossible to pay for large newsrooms on the basis of the two healthiest media financing practices, subscription and advertisement. So there are a couple smaller media organs who publish short form or long form exclusively, but do not operate a newsroom, who can finance themselves on the basis of subscriptions, donations, or advertisement. But for larger and more expensive media genres that include a newsroom or news television, there are two dominant financing practices that are slightly intransparent and lead to deficiencies in the credibility of some media to some part of the population. One of them, of course, is government subsidies in the form of advertisement from government-owned companies, and the other form is grants from abroad. European Union grants, European Commission grants, very intransparent and very hard to trace programs to finance mostly opposition media. USAID was also part of this before President Trump came into office. And so, as to your question on who is to blame or not blame, who is to thank for this very transparent and brutally honest way in which Hungarians interact with their media. I think this is a product of the last 15 years, primarily. Before that, conservative media have barely existed. And the emergence of conservative media, parallel to the rule of Viktor Orbán, has given rise to a wave of admiration of like how different media angles can be and how differently you can report on the same story or on the situation in the same country. And people suddenly realized that what they have been fed for 20 years since the fall of communism in Hungary and until the rise of Orbán to power, that was only one angle. And that there is another reality, another way of looking at things from a conservative angle that is very, very different. Both of these angles are now mainstream in Hungary. Both of these angles are represented by media organs like mine and many others that are widely read. None of them are considered universally propaganda by much of the country. Each of them is trusted more by adherents of the pro-government political community in Hungary and the anti-government political community in Hungary. And I think generally this way of existing in media, that everybody is clear about whether they are for and against this government, which is a polarizing government. It's one that you can have a very positive or a very negative opinion on. I think this makes media more credible and the interaction between media and its viewers more honest than in other countries.
But in the percentages, so you can say, is it 80 to 20%? Like, as you said, opposition media. Do you use that term, opposition or independent media? How do you decide what term you are going to use?
I would use opposition partly because these media organs also are part of these perverse financing mechanisms from abroad. I would not call their financing purely market-based or clean or healthy. in any way, shape, or form. I would not rank them in this sense as more independent or more market-based than the pro-government side of Hungarian media. And I would say there is a difference in the shares depending on the platform. Like in terms of radio, pro-government media are obviously at an advantage. In the television sphere, I would say it's completely 50-50. There is one large pro-opposition news television, one large pro-opposition commercial television, and this is like almost the exact same picture on the pro-government side. In the rankings, usually the opposition news television leads, but the more pro-government commercial television's news program usually is more viewed than that of the pro-opposition commercial television. In the online sector, where I think it's the most important, I would say there is still a slight, but only very slight, pro-opposition advantage in terms of reach. You could compare the numbers of papers that exist, but I don't think this is a valid basis for comparison because media is not made relevant by its existence. It's made relevant by its reach.
Mm-hmm.
And
so what is the reach of Mandinera?
Mandinera. So we reach on average.
You have online.
Yes,
editions?
we have an online newspaper. We have a weekly magazine. We have a YouTube channel. So our online magazine, which is a flagship product, reaches about 250 to 450,000 individual readers per day. That positions us firmly in the national top 10, sometimes in the national top 5. The largest media in Hungary are reaching 800,000 to 1 million readers on a good day and 600,000 on a bad day. And the tier after us would reach about 150,000 to 200,000 a day. So these are, I think, relevant Hungarian media organs could be ranked into these 3 tiers. We are firmly at the front of the second tier.
Do you consider a journalist community in Hungary to be a solidary community? Do you have a fight among you, or do journalists from pro-government media and the other side media, do they attack each other? Do media have wars among each other?
This has a long and painful history in Hungary. That long and painful history, I think, started at the fall of communism, when the elite, the liberal elite that shaped Hungary's systemic change, the fall of communism in Hungary, also occupied basically all of the positions in media. And even though the country also had a significant national conservative population, their media was not considered media. They have suffered, I would say, like a decade of humiliation that left scars in them. That's the first and the most basic thing I would say about the Hungarian media landscape and the solidarity between journalists. Despite this, I would say that until 2014, so 4 years into this current government's tenure, there still were remnants of solidarity and some sort of a shared purpose in the heads of pro-government and anti-government journalists in Hungary. That solidarity was not eradicated, but diminished significantly after 2014, where a rift within the then pro-government media happened. Orbán and one of his most important political confidants and political allies, Lajos Simicska, a businessman who was also instrumental in creating I would say the financial basis of the Hungarian conservative movement. They had a very significant spat, and Lajos Simicska was the owner of most Hungarian private pro-government media at the time. So this spat led to some journalists changing their opinions about the government overnight and betraying their colleagues. Some journalists stuck with Simicska, some journalists stuck with Orbán. And this history of personal betrayal had, I would say, sharpened divisions among Hungarian journalists and made the atmosphere very toxic. So I am not on speaking terms with every single journalist in this country. But I would still say there are remnants of solidarity, and there are possibilities to ask each other for favors, for contacts. That there is a minimum of solidarity that remains between moderate journalists on both sides of the aisle. But I would generally not say that the Hungarian journalist community is one full of solidarity and friendship anymore.
But do you have direct conflicts, like in one media, that you are saying the names of other journalists?
Yes,
and they are
yes, very much so. And this is popular content. This is content that is being read. So there is intense love and intense hate in our readership for very specific journalist personalities.
Do you do something which is going below some standards? So is there any, we would say like this is not a human way of dealing with colleagues?
I would not say it impacts colleagues. So I would not say there are brutal smear campaigns against fellow journalists. There are heavy opinionated articles that lambast the work of other journalists, but I would not say there are significant smear campaigns. However, there are smear campaigns in Hungarian media, both pro-government and pro-opposition, about politicians. Mm-hmm. I could name two good examples. Recently, like this week, in Hungary, there has been quite a stir about some completely baseless allegations of pedophilia being leveled against the deputy prime minister with no proof whatsoever. And some opposition media were complicit. Some serious opposition media were complicit in this smear campaign that they then backed out of after having learned, due to an official investigation into the matter, that none of this has any foundation, none of this has any base at all. And of course, pro-government media, especially during campaign periods, there are some pro-government media organs, thankfully this does not include mine, that would, for example, have in 2018 called the then leader of the opposition, again without any foundation or any base, a gay person. This was they ran like a smear campaign on the then leader of the opposition, Gábor Vona, and claimed that he had an affair with a famous drag queen. So there are very low-level, very dirty allegations and smear campaigns against politicians of the other side. Not journalists, not so much, no.
Okay, but how you decided to become a journalist, having in mind that you have a good education, when you decided it, and how you decided to work for your media? I
didn't really decide any of that myself. It was more of a work of God, I would assume. I did not plan to become a journalist. I was planning to become an interpreter between German, Arabic, and Russian. And it just so happened that in the junior year of high school, that would be grade 11 for Serbian listeners, I had an opportunity to attend a scholarship program in California, and I spent my junior high school year in the US. And I didn't want to tell every one of my friends, family, and acquaintances separately and individually about this trip, so I started a blog. And that blog was noticed after it published some political articles, because I was obviously politically interested for much of my adult and non-adult life. That was noticed by the paper at which I work, and they asked me if I wanted to continue basically the same thing, but already under their ages. And that happened in 2019, so a month before my high school graduation, and it evolved very quickly into a full-time job that I do and love ever since.
Mm-hmm. So you have been journalist for how many years?
6 years now.
6 years now. You as a journalist, you are publicly saying that you are pro-Orban, or you shouldn't say that because you are already in pro-Orban media? Do you criticize some moves, or what is your freedom in those kind of media who are considered pro-governmental?
So being pro-governmental is not my most significant message. Of course, I am labeled pro-governmental and I identify with the political community due to the sheer fact that I work where I work. But I don't repeat long live Orban every single day, and I don't consider that to be my job as a journalist. So my freedom stems from the fact that I have an education, that I have skills, and that I am not, I don't have to choose between working for the paper where I work and starving. So I can work there as long as what I do suits them and what they like to have from me suits me. I have, for this very reason, absolutely no fear of criticizing the government with which I generally sympathize. I have criticized them on many occasions, and on every single topic that was of interest to me. I've had spats of criticism leveled against the government on, for example, the exchange rate of the Hungarian forint against the euro. I've had issues, and I've made it an issue that Hungary is living in a state of emergency that is harmful to business interests for a couple of years. I have had, I think my criticism against the Hungarian public education system is harsher than what many of my opposition colleagues would dare to publish. But all of this does not diminish the fact that in the most important questions of Hungarian and European politics, I do very honestly side with the government. This regards migration, this regards the Ukraine war, this regards Europe's economic competitiveness, this regards Chinese investment in Hungary, this regards many things. On all of those issues that are important to me, I am pro-government. I am not shy of saying so, but I'm also not shy of pointing out the issues in my own my own political camp.
What kind of knowledge and skills do young journalists have to have today in Hungary? And is journalism a right job to do nowadays? What is the average salary? And
So I would say there is no such thing as an average salary in journalism. There is a salary for people who are talented and find their place and become indispensable, and for them journalism provides a very comfortable life. And there are colleagues who are constantly exposed to hardships in life, who don't necessarily know what their place is in journalism, who switch from paper to paper. And for those colleagues, their lives are significantly harder and their salary is not as high. But I would not say that I could name like a figure. Every journalist, of course, makes a living wage. That there is not, journalists don't starve. But whether or not it's a well-paid job, that really depends on whether you have found your passion and your place in Hungarian media.
Young people want to become investigative journalists, or they just switch to become PRs, or
they don't necessarily want to be journalists. I would not say that this career is very popular nowadays. That I think also has something to do with the way journalists are trained. We do not have a dedicated journalism school in Hungary. Usually people who would like to work in media go and attend communications majors at public universities, but this is not the skill set that Hungarian media actually wants. What Hungarian media actually wants is young professionals who are able to write and speak about topics that they understand, which might be foreign policy, which might be the economy, which might be domestic politics in Hungary, which might be culture, which might be whatever. So there is a mismatch between the way we train journalists and the kinds of journalists that we need. And that mismatch, I think, leads to people who have wanted to join the ranks of the media being diverted towards PR and very different jobs. And this has also led to some people who would be good journalists not making it into the career because they did not, like, they identified journalism with a communications major, which is frowned upon and not looked at very positively or very respectfully by people who have studied things that are considered more real.
You know media situation in Serbia. So can you compare what are the differences, and can you find some similarities in our media ecosystem?
I would say that Yellow Paper's boulevard media is much more prominent in Serbia, and that has to do not just with the intentions of those who run media, that also has to do with the preferences of the Serbian media consumers. So in Hungary, political boulevard also exists, but its ratings and its readership has fallen off a cliff in recent years. It has very clearly not been working. Papers who were in this kind of business have experienced their reach dwindling drastically and their existence being questioned.
But do you also connect that with the rulers' wishes or the people who are in power? What they want to have more in media?
You cannot make people read things they don't want to read. And I would say every political community, if it's interested in having its own media space, a media space that reflects its ideas while critically reflecting on the way the political community actually works, they need to have effective media that people consider media that people trust. And political boulevard with a very low standard of newsmanship just doesn't cut it anymore in Hungary. And I think this reckoning has not necessarily come yet in Serbia, and political boulevard has a much more significant role there than it would be a case in Hungary. This must have to do with many cultural aspects. Definitely there are differences in the way the Serbian government shapes the media landscape compared to the way the Hungarian. But you know, I really want to stress that you cannot make people read stuff they don't want to read. And it's of course important what media gets financing, but if it's financed but not read, it becomes something ridiculous. And it's something that doesn't actually shape the way Serbian people think.
Do you think if something is ridiculous?
No, I just mean if something is ridiculous, then people are not going to consider that a credible source of information. I don't know about the ratings of Serbian boulevard media, but I assume from the mere fact that it is so widespread that it must have more ratings, more viewership, and for some reason more interest from the Serbian population than Hungarian political boulevard has from Hungarian readers.
Okay. Do your governmental officials on the lower levels and also on the higher governmental level, do they respond to questions of the media who are not controlled by or who are not pro-governmental oriented?
It's good that you made that clarification, because I firmly do not believe that there is media in Hungary that is controlled by the Orban government. There is media that is affiliated, there is media that is friendly towards it, but I think the power of media lies in not being controlled, and being controlled shows its very ugly face, and it diminishes your credibility very, very, very fast. I would say there is definitely a difference in the levels of access to politicians, both government and opposition. And of course, government is more important because they are running the country. There are differences in the levels of access for friendly and non-friendly journalists. That definitely is the case. But I would also say that this difference in access is not so radical that it would impact the ability of the Hungarian people to hear the answers of their politicians to tough questions. It is not very often, but it is reasonably regular that leading politicians of the Hungarian government gave interviews to anti-government media, and there is also the tradition of a weekly or bi-weekly government press conference where everybody gets to ask its non-scripted questions. These questions are not scripted. This is a very free-flowing conversation between the minister heading the cabinet of the prime minister and every journalist who is relevant in the country for 2 to 3 hours each week or every second week.
Ordered questions, like that journalists are asking questions which they got from, we say sometimes cabinet or.
Not in the government, not in the government press conferences. Of course, at protocol functions, I don't know when the last time was when I heard a real question at a press conference where a foreign leader was present. But this is also a question of diplomacy and the question of foreign policy. And of course, I think everywhere in the world, the space for questions is restricted at events where foreign leaders attend.
I listened to a BBC journalist who said that he got a tip that he will be in a position to ask, but he didn't get a question, or he was not provided with a question.
When?
for a conference where, I don't know, the state officials were in Britain. So they just get, we are talking about procedure. You will got a tip that you will be in a position to ask a question, but not that they say what you should ask.
At
From the organizer, so that's
at foreign policy news conferences, that would be the case. Yes, like you would get to ask whatever you want to, but you will have to check the fact that you are asking with the organizers. But at the regular weekly or bi-weekly government press conference, everybody gets to ask a question, and they get to ask multiple questions, follow-ups, which are not in any way scripted or provided to them by higher governmental authorities.
So from 1 to 10, media freedoms in Hungary and Serbia?
I would, although it is very tempting to score, I would reply in different terms. I think the current political situation in Serbia shows that there is a level of distrust in many aspects of the Serbian system of government and the Serbian system of power, and I cannot possibly imagine that this doesn't impact media. So I think there is less trust in the media that exists in Serbia than there is in Hungary. But I think it is the case in both of our countries that media can exist, provided they find some way to finance themselves, which is challenging in our smaller language spaces. Media can exist, and media can write, and the issues in both countries start to arise when you want to run an expensive media genre, because at that point, but I think this is not specific to either Hungary or Serbia, you will have to start thinking about how you run an operation this large. And how you finance it on a regular rolling basis. And you have to make some hard decisions as a publisher. This is, I think, a problem for every single smaller language community in Europe or around the world, that it's hard because of the economics of scale to run expensive media genres in small language markets. And that is where perverted financing practices start playing a role.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.